Hello and welcome along to the Panto podcast. This week my guest is Mr. David Burton. Son of a comedian and tiller girl, theatre is in David's blood. He's currently celebrating his 50th professional pantomime, including the summer ones. And we talk about all different things, including his writing of comedy, how he almost bagged the role of Doctor Who, and what was worse to work with, an elderly animal or a troublesome actor. So please sit back and enjoy the latest Panto podcast. My guest for today's Panto podcast is David Burton. Hello, David.
Oh, hello, Hayden.
A second attempt, shall I say, to try and get this done. We held up a performance. We held up a performance of Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, that's right.
So we got half an interview recorded.
Yeah.
We're starting afresh. So
yeah.
How have things been then?
Oh, very good indeed. Thank you very much indeed for asking. Actually, it's been busy time, and even busier now that we're just at the start of the pantomime season as we're doing this particular interview. And thank you for asking me to do it, because I'm extremely flattered, and to be in such amazing company as some of the other podcast people who've been on, most of which I have heard, I really shouldn't be mentioned in the same breath, I feel, at certain times,
David, well, thank you for that, but also you are Panto royalty as well. How many is it you've knocked up now?
Well, If I just count the Christmas ones, this is my 42nd. But if I do, if I count in the Easter and summer ones that I've done, and just out of seasons, this would be my 50th. So,
wow.
Well, it does make me feel extremely old, which of course I am.
How old are you then?
I'm now 72.
You don't come across like that.
Do I not?
No, but you're still very jovial, and the movements are great. And
thank you.
I wouldn't have said 72.
Oh, that you're very kind, and you're welcome back again as well.
Thank you. You did make me a cup of coffee. So, was the family a theatrical family you came from?
Yes, that's right. My father was an actor and a comedian, and my mother was a dancer, one of the original Tiller girls. Going way back to when they first started out, it were all Lancashire lasses then. And and as anyone has ever seen me in pantomime will know that I don't take after my mother's talent, choreography and dancing. I tend to take after my father a little bit more, I think, in that way. But yes, I came from that sort of theatre background, and, so I knew all the difficulties and all the hardships and everything, quite early on.
Did Dad travel around a lot then?
Yes, he did. In fact, I now live down on the south coast, a little place called Littlehampton, and we've only lived there about 10 years now, I think, moved down there. But my father actually was in summer season in Bognor when I was born. So I was born in a place called Rustington, which is virtually next door to Littlehampton. And that wasn't by design or anything like that. It's just the way life worked out. But my mother came from the north, so we lived up there for the first 5 years of my life. I was in Warrington. And then my father's family were from Redhill and Reigate in Surrey. And so then we moved down there. And that's basically where I've been the whole of my life, really. But as I say, moved to Littlehampton about 10 years ago. So. And the reason for that is because my wife had a sister who lived down there. I'm away from home an awful lot at Christmas. Now the children are all grown up. It was just nice for her to be able to, on Christmas Day, go round to her sisters for Christmas dinner. And, while I'm stuck in some miserable digs in some way forgotten place out in the sticks, But we're so used to it now that it's lovely, really, have Christmas when I get back home.
Did you go around then with Dad when he was touring?
I did. Well, not really. I mean, we did try to have a bit of a double act at one time. He played piano by ear. Usually people use their fingers, but he played piano by ear, and I was not terribly musical, but I had an idea of rhythm. So what we did is we had a comedy act where he played piano, and I had a set of wire brushes and drumsticks, and we had old biscuit tins of different shapes and things like that. And I'd play the drums, as it were, made out of biscuit tins. And so we used to do a few clubs and children's parties and those sort of that sort of thing quite early on. But really, he didn't want me to go into the business. Both my parents didn't want me to go into the business because they knew all the hardships, so they were trying to talk me out of it all the time. But, you know, if you're determined enough, you're going to do it anyway. You've got to be bloody minded in this business, you know, to be reasonably successful, you know. And, I've been fortunate, so in almost constantly working, so, yeah.
What was it then that spurred you on?
I think, initially, I went to see my dad. I'd probably only been about 4, I should think, at the time. And I was taken to see my dad, and I think it was St Helens. And it was Cinderella. It was, my dad was an ugly sister. The other ugly sister was Danny LaRue. Probably one of the most glamorous ugly sisters you've ever seen. And the Buttons in it was an old crooner of the time, way back in the 1950s, Dave King, who later became a character actor and everything, you know. But he was very popular at the time as a crooner. And he, as I said, he was playing Buttons. And when it came to the pathos scene, where they're having the pretend ball and everything in the kitchen, and it just made me cry a little bit, you know. And then there's the tearing up of the ticket afterwards, which was worse. But as soon as I saw Buttons doing the pathos bit, after having all this fun and laughter beforehand, and I just thought to myself, I want to do that. That's what I want to do, you know. And as I say, I'd only be about 4 or 5 maybe at the time, but it made a real impression on me. So my first experience of theatre was pantomime, and that's why it's very, very close to my heart, you know.
Were you a funny child then?
I don't think so. I think I was rather shy. Certainly at school, I was one of those who would sit at the back and very, very quiet. But I had a great love of reading. And I was not noticed very much by teachers, but my scope for reading was quite diverse. I got told off by one of my English teachers for reading Enid Blyton's famous 5 story. Said he's reading beneath himself in a report. But the next day I was reading Addison's essays, you know, so because I enjoyed the words, and so I still have a great love of the words and everything. Look, I've got your Times crossword here.
Oh, that's good.
Which I do between shows, or hopefully can finish between shows.
For people who know you, you're always on Facebook making funny little jokes up every day. There's a discipline, isn't there, for yourself?
Well, it is. I write for quite a number of comedians and a couple of television programmes as well, which I'm not allowed to name, unfortunately, because the writers are supposed to be anonymous, because it makes the comics look good. As if, aren't they wonderful? You know, they're thinking of these impromptu lines, which I have, and a team of us have come up with. So some of the rejects that I get from that I put out on my Facebook page, so that they're not completely wasted.
I'd love to see the best ones.
Well, that's very kind of you. But yeah, it's I've always loved humour and comedy, and I was for a short while, when my children were very young and I didn't have a lot of work as an actor, I did become a journalist, and I was given my own column, which became a humour column, and in the end was syndicated to something like 50 newspapers, magazines all over the country, which was very nice and gave me a nice, pleasant little income. And then suddenly, out of the blue, I was asked to do pantomime because they thought I was a local personality, as it were, because the picture byline on this column. And I used to get quite a number of, I wouldn't like to say fan letters, because fan to me always sounds a bit condescending, but you have a certain amount of followers. And I used to get these letters from people saying, oh, you must have been in our house under the table, exactly the same thing happens to us, you know. So it's really an observational identification humour, if you like, you know, about me being the only male in a family of females, you know, 2 daughters and a wife, and always losing the battle, basically, to, you know. I always thought God was in the bathroom because they were hammering on the door. God, are you still in there?
What is it then about comedy that you love so much?
I think most people would agree. Actually, laughter is the best emotion that you can, and it's such a broad emotion as well, because it goes from a little grin, a smirk, to a downright belly laugh. People's range of humour is so diverse. But to make people laugh, to be able to make people laugh, is one of the most wonderful things, and I just love hearing the sound of laughter. I like the sound of applause as well, but no, for me, laughter, and it doesn't always have to come out of my mouth. Sometimes the way I'm working with now, I'm working with a wonderful comic, Steve Walls, who I know has been on podcast, and I've worked with him. I think this is the 4th time we've worked together. But quite often I'll say, it's a good line. He says, no, you say that because you thought. And I said, no, it doesn't work for my character, and you're the lead comic. And he says, you're so generous. And I said, well, it's not about that. It's about the whole audience and the whole production. And I'll change the line around. When we first did Cinderella, his line with Cinderella, don't cry, Cinderella, you'll go rusty. And I said, what might be better if don't cry, Cinderella, all the tears will run down your back and you'll get bacteria. And he said, yeah, that's a better line, I get a laugh. So that went in instead. But when he first did it in rehearsal, he just turned and said, thank you, David Burton, for that one. So he didn't try to claim it as his own. He just pointed out that it was the line that I'd created. So he's a wonderful, generous comic in that way.
Apart from Dad, then, who would you say are your comedy sort of heroes and influences?
Oh, goodness me, there's so many. Virtually everybody who makes people laugh, actually, going from kind of like Harry Worth, even Knockabout Charlie Drake. I did work with Charlie, and I've got to be honest, he wasn't one of my favourite people, but not to me particularly. I didn't have any problems because I was quite young, but there were some other problems that other people suffered from, which I won't go into the details now, but but the knockabout humour, the slapstick humour of Charlie Drake, Bruce Forsyth, who I'd worked with quite a bit, and just everybody really. These days I like Paul Merton. I like the modern comics. Some people say, no, it's not old school. No, it's not. Times change, and yes, I'm not terribly keen on comics who have to rely on bad language or obscenities to make the joke, because quite often it's not necessary. But if that's what they want to do and the public accept it, fine. I'm not going to be one to criticise, but it's not my sort of humour. If you take out the swear word, probably the gag is just as good, So, but I like modern comics too. So, the whole range is very diverse. I like some of the American ones as well, One of my heroes would be Bob Monkhouse, as a writer and comic, but people underappreciated him a thing at a time, just a game show host and slick and this, but he wasn't really. He was much more. There's much more depth to him than that, actually. And I thought he was brilliant, really brilliant. I love the little story that he tells about. He said, I like to sleep naked. I like to sleep naked. And there I was, in this lovely hotel, my digs, a nice hotel and everything else. There I was lying naked on the bed. Then in came the chambermaid. Eventually. And I just love that sort of timing of it all, And a very similar experience happened to me, actually. I had a day off. I was in Bolton a couple of years ago, and we had the day off, and I was in this lovely hotel, and afternoon, and I'd been out and everything. I thought, really nice shower and bath. I had a bath rather than wash my hair, and I was stood in the middle of the hotel room drying my hair with the hairdryer, and suddenly the door opened and it was the head chambermaid just coming to see, and I hadn't heard a knock on the door because the noise from the hairdryer, so she just let herself in. So she kind of screamed and I said, oh, I'm so sorry. Stood there in all my glory drying my hair.
Did she ask for an autograph?
Not at that point.
you remember then the first laugh you got on stage?
I remember it was something that went wrong, and I was working with my dad at the time. He was Dame, and we were doing, let me think, Little Red Riding Hood, which is not not done as a pantomime these days at all, I don't think. And my father was Dame, and I was playing Simple Simon in it. And we had the usual laughs in the right place and things like that. And then something went wrong backstage. There was a scene problem. And so they brought a curtain, or front cloth in, and we said, got to do something, So just impromptu, I said to my dad, who could tap dance pretty well, let's just go on. You teach me how to tap. And it had been snowing, so I'd got a pair of welly boots in the wings. So I just put those on and did literally him trying to teach me to tap in readiness for the ball later. And I was doing the old eccentric dancing, basically, that sort of thing, and asked the drummer, could you just give me a military beat and everything else, and the whole thing got laughs the whole way through, completely impromptu, and a huge round of applause, because the audience kind of knew that something had gone wrong and that we were just making it up as we went along. So then that's when I first thought, I really like getting laughter. And then much later, when I went to drama school, we used to have improvisational lessons anyway. And one day, the scenario was there's an aeroplane, and you've all got to come up with these various stories as to why you should be on the aeroplane, because there's only a limited number of seats left. And so all these people going up there and sort of saying, my father's dying and I must be there, and my daughter's getting married, or my wife's having a baby, and all these dramatic scenes as the reason why. And the drama teacher had to sort of say, and carry on whether you were allowed on the plane or not. So when it came to my turn, which was the last one, fortunately, I think, I said, I just need to be on that plane. I need to be on that plane. She said, well, why? And I said, because I'm the pilot. And that way, I didn't have to improvise too much more. And she just said, right, comedy for you, And that was it, basically. I think, that I had felt that I had a talent's too strong a word, but I had a certain identification with humour. And yes, I do like the sound of laughter, and again, working with Steve, it's a delight, because we both know, I know when he's going to get a laugh, or perhaps he won't sometimes, but I know when to come in and when to hold back. So as the straight man, if you like, to him, you have to be aware of the timing, and I'd like to think I've got a natural ability to do that, as it were, which I would probably get from my father inbuilt, So.
When Mum and Dad then just realised that you did want to tread the boards,
yes,
were they supportive?
They were. First of all, they did try to talk me out of it completely, and I did a school play, and I didn't tell them I was doing it. Just learned all my lines under the bed sheets at night with a torch, and just kept it very, very quiet. And it was a straight play. It wasn't a comedy, but unbeknown to me, and I told my teachers, don't tell my mum and dad, don't tell my mum and dad, But my headmaster did. He wrote them a letter saying, I know saying, I think you ought to come and see this. So they did. They came along on the last night, and I had no idea they were in. And as I finished, I packed up and was going down the school corridor, and I saw them walking towards me. And I thought, oh my God, I am in so much trouble. But they weren't. They said that was great. That really was a wonderful performance. And so they backed me virtually ever since then. And my father just said, if you're going to be bloody minded about it like I was, then you're going to do it anyway. So, but never let me down. Never let me down. I will back you up to the hilt, but just never let me down insofar as suddenly deciding, nah, I don't want to do that now. I want to go off and be an accountant or something, So yeah, I had a commitment then to them to follow that as much as I possibly could. So yeah.
And did they ever go and see you perform?
Yes, they did, and I was very lucky. I had a lot of television work as a youngster, like 3 series of Just William with Dennis Waterman. So, and I was often in things like Dixon of Dock Green as some young tearaway or whatever, or Emergency Ward 10 as some patient with a stab wound or something, from a gang fight. So yeah, they saw me quite a lot on television, and yes, when I was doing pantomimes that my father wasn't involved in, my mother would come along and watch, but they were very critical too. They were quite hard on me, saying, "Well, it's fine, but you need to do this, or you need to do that, or you could do that better, or you try it this way and everything." So. And I did listen, of course. You've got your own way of doing things naturally, but yeah, they were very critical, but that's a help in a way because they're people that you trust and you love and trust. So what they're saying, it must be right. So yeah, I did admire their comments quite a bit.
So, Mum and Dad then, in their performances, how much of that do you think rubs off onto you?
Well, certainly not the dancing bit.
For Dad, though,
I think I can see certain mannerisms and things like that. They always say that the worst thing for an actor is what to do with your hands when you're on stage. And I do notice it in some young performers that they feel awkward about that, they don't know what to do. But watching my dad and the way he used his hands, I've kind of grown up with that. So I use my hands expressively on stage, but not wave them around so much. It's like, a hay bale in a typhoon or something, It would just make people seasick, I think, if you did that. But, so I think that's one of the important parts of stagecraft that I learned from him, and how to move on stage and where to be on stage, when you need to be centre stage and when you need to be just to the side and having a private conversation whilst not sort of pulling focus away from where the eyes should really be, but still be involved in the action. And I think also the other thing that I was taught from him was you're never on stage just waiting to say your line. You're there listening, but doing something else. Because in normal life, people are busy doing other things, but on stage you can see some actors with a blank look and just really waiting for the cue. And life's not like that. That's not real, So that's one of the things that I was taught by him, and working with him and watching him. That's how you pick them up. And when you go to drama school, they say, "Where'd you get that?" And of course, it's inbuilt, really,
Did Dad ever do straight acting?
Yes, he did. He was just on television recently, actually, in Brighton Rock, which was on with Richard Attenborough. But he didn't do very much in the way of straight acting. I think he was also in Noel Cowley's Happy Breed and things like that. But mostly it was comedy and variety, really, variety act. He was known as Will Burton as a variety actor and Ralph Burton as an actor. So he had the posher name for being the actor.
That first pantomime then you took part in with Dad.
Yeah, which was Babes in the Wood.
Babes in the
Robin Hood and the Babes in the Wood, yeah.
Do you remember the excitement from that first performance?
I do actually. I remember being told off as well by my dad because we went out from the theatre in between shows just to have something to eat. And I sat down opposite him and everything, and he said, "You haven't taken your makeup off." And I said, "I know, but basically I wanted people to know that I was in the show. That's why I had my makeup on." And he said, "Always take your makeup off before you go out in public." And he was very strict on things like that. And also, never sit down in your costume. Once you were in costume, you weren't allowed to sit down in case you creased it or anything like that, you know. So there were rules which he made me follow. But yes, I remember the excitement and then felt, oh dear, you know, because I wanted to be recognised as being, you know, oh, he's in the show, he's got makeup on, you know. And of course then it was the old 5 and 9 and the red dots in the eyes and things like that. So.
When then did you first become kind of the Buttons role?
I suppose the first time I played Buttons, I'd have been about 20-ish, I think. Maybe a little older, I can't quite remember. And it wasn't a huge production or very glamorous production. In fact, we had a real problem with the coach. And I can't remember who was Cinderella at the time. But the coach and horses, and I was saying, you know, when I saw the theatre, I thought, there's no way going to get this coach and horses on stage, you know, these ponies. It's not going to happen. And I said to the producer and director, I said, how's this going to work? And he said, oh, don't you worry about it, it'll be okay. And I said, I can't really see it myself. He said, look, anyway, it's not your problem. And no, I know, but I'm just interested. You know? Anyhow, we didn't see the coach or the horses until we came to the actual, almost a dress, well, I think it was a dress rehearsal. And what they decided to do was bring the coach and the horses down through the audience and the centre aisle, then back it up in front of the orchestra pit, then Cinderella would go down the steps at the side, then get on the coach, and then it would go out through the auditorium again and out the front doors. And anyway, we came to the dress rehearsal and get this scene. I'm watching from the wings, and as these doors opened, this rather mangy-looking donkey was being pulled first of all by its handler, because it was very reluctant to move, with something that looked like a railway dolly with wire coat hangers all knitted together and a bit of tinsel around. It was pretty naff, I can tell you. Anyhow, it took absolutely ages to persuade this donkey to go down to the front and then poor Cinders to get on it. This is just really not going to work. Anyway, we opened the next day to a matinee and a full house of kids and families. And the doors opened in this scene. There's this poor, mangy, very sick-looking donkey being dragged down. And it gets to the front and they try to back it up. And the orchestra are playing yet another verse to cover all this. At which point, the donkey just keeled over and died.
No.
Knocking the sort of front part of the orchestra pit away. So horror of horrors. And the front of house manager or whoever it was went up, just banged on the stage, used a bit bad language, and sort of basically said, "Get your asses out here! Bloody donkey's dead." At which point, 4 stage crew came out, uncoupled this poor animal from the coach, grabbed a leg each, and then walked it back through the audience to all these sobbing kids, you know. And it wasn't obviously the most glamorous of pantomimes that I've been in, but yeah, I think that was the first time I played Buttons, and I think it's also maybe where they probably got it. I know because it ended up on the news about, you know, and I think later, much later, they news items, they always used to have a comedy bit at the end, and there was a programme called Drop the Dead Donkey. So in other words, you know, a real serious news story has come in, so we won't do the joke one at the end.
Yeah.
So it's Drop the Dead Donkey story.
How did you get out of that though?
Well, we really quite difficult. The next day they hadn't got another donkey, still got the same carriage thing, which still looked naff. But also this time it was being pulled by 2 stage crew, wearing what looked like Hessian sacking, with 2 cardboard ears.
Oh.
And then that was used throughout the rest of the performance. I think it was only a 2-week run, fortunately, but...
What about then the song sheets? You must take a lot of delight chatting to the kids.
Oh, yes. And they're always so unpredictable what the kids do. And when I was doing it, I used to allow the kids to get the laughs. I used to have a set sort of thing that I'd ask them, like, what school do you go to, you know? What's your favourite subject at school, and do you like maths? Do you like sums? You know, oh yes, we like sums. Well, I've got a little sums test for you. If you had 2 rabbits and another 2 rabbits, how many rabbits would you have? And they said 4. I say no, you'll have 356. Now then, your mother will explain that when you go back to your seat, and we're all going to listen. So I do something like that, but most of the time they come out with something which is funny anyway, so let them have the laugh, as it were. You know, you just go along without embarrassing them. That's the other thing, actually. And one of the things I always hated was when they used to say to me, you leave one on stage because there's not a present for them. They haven't got enough gifts to go around, and then you keep on giving them more and more. But I always hated doing that. I'd say, no, I refuse to do that. I don't want to have a child upset on stage because the other 3 have gone off with their presents, and what are you doing still here? You know, that sort of thing. And they're like, you know, I haven't got a present. And you know, or you're told that they're going to get, well, there's a balloon for to be going on with. Off you go, you know. No, right, and you go and get more things. But I never liked doing that, actually, and because I think it makes the child feel upset. And also, it's like anything with audience participation, actually. I think they've come to see us. They've paid to see us perform. Not they're part of the performance, do you know what I mean? It's okay when you get the dame with a little bit of banter with one of the men in the audience. That's all fine, I think. But to bring people up on stage out of the audience and make them look a little foolish at times, you know, I don't find that
doesn't sit well with you.
No, it doesn't. No, I mean I've done it when I've been told to, but I'm not comfortable doing that sort of thing. As I say, I think they paid to see what we're doing, not the other way around. You know, so yeah, it's not a comfortable situation for me.
Your own children, then? Have they got theatrical blood?
No, not really. I mean, my eldest daughter, she did. I mean, I like my parents, I tried to talk her out of it, and she went to college and did film studies and theatre studies, and did all that. And then, again, I had a long chat with her and said, "Are you sure you really want to do this?" And she knew all the pitfalls and everything, obviously, but she also had a talent for as a seamstress. So she moved over and lived in Germany for quite a while and became a costume person for them, and sort of doing for like Berlin Opera and things like that, so designing and sewing, and so she's sort of connected but not as a performer. And my younger daughter eventually ended up by becoming a pub landlady in their own pub, which also is sort of a little bit, you've got to be on show all the time.
The bravado,
yeah, and you've got to have this smile on your face all the time, no matter what's going on behind the bar and all the dramas you get there. So yeah, I suppose in a way it's kind of an entertainment aspect to it, or there is an entertainment aspect to it. Plus, you also had acts on in the pub and things like that, which you always enjoyed. So yeah, it was, in a way, they're connected, but not in the same way.
Not treading the balls.
No. I think they think that one ego in the family's enough.
What are the difficult things then about being a performer?
I think it's the main difficulty, I think, is the times being away from home, when you've got and you miss out on a lot of things when your children are growing up and you're away on tour and, maybe for 3 months or something like that, though you may be able to get home a couple of times, but in that 3 months a child has learnt so much or grown so much or their hair colour's different and it's actually my child, moved house 3 times, still got the same window cleaner. I think the separations are the worst part. And as I get older now, I think the worst part is learning the lines, really, or remembering them. Because I remember when I was a young actor, you could just literally have the lines would just sit there, and you'd see the page. You could see the page, with everything that was written on it. Now, it's a real hard slog trying to remember lines, or get them in there so that they're locked in more or less on autopilot. I never say they should be on autopilot because you need to be able to change them around a little bit according to audience reaction. And different nuances in the way you say things according to what's gone on before, or another actor might deliver their line slightly differently, which alters the timing of what you're saying. So you should never be on autopilot insofar as you're just saying words, as it were. There's got to be an emotion or a reason behind what you're saying. That sounds very actress, doesn't it? What's my motivation? But there's an element of that, and I think also with pantomime, I think it's very, very important. And I know that I get some actors say to me, "Oh, pantomime, such low humour," and all that. Really look down on it. And I always say, I tell you what, it's the hardest work you'll ever do as an actor. It really is a tough rehearsal period, when you've got to take all this on, dance routines, song lyrics that you're not familiar with, plus your lines, and the fact that you work really long hours during that rehearsal period, 10 o'clock in the morning till 10 at night sometimes, it's very demanding, very demanding. And those who look down on it, other actors who look down on it are... I don't have too much time for them, really.
Well, more fool them. They're missing out.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. I mean, it is enormous fun once you've got it up and going, and it becomes your own show. It's enormous fun, but it's still hard work. And the tiredness, it's unbelievable how your eyelids keep drooping, when you're not on stage. And in between shows, I will come in here and lie underneath the dressing table here with a pillow and whatever, and have a half-hour kip or something, just to recharge the batteries. But you find that your eyes are drooping, and it's just the mental and physical pressures and strains of it all. So but I would do it for as long as I possibly can, as long as I can move about the stage reasonably nimbly and still got most of my faculties. And even though I play all these parts now as eccentric old fools, which gives me a little bit of leeway if something goes wrong, as long as I can do that, and people like Blue Genie and Polka Dot and are still willing to keep having me back, then I'll carry on as long as I can.
Do you remember when you actually left sort of the comic role and went to the sort of the more mature?
More mature. I don't remember an actual transition. In fact, I think I made the decision myself. I think that I'm not that bouncy young character anymore, and so to a degree I had to age up. Now I don't have to bother with all that aging up, but at the time I did, and I found actually I quite like playing these parts. They're often more of an actor role than a comedian, if you like. And I'm not a comedian. Though I write comedy, I'm not a comedian myself. And I have so much admiration for them. I have so many friends who are bombing around the country, up and down, 400 miles to do a 45-minute spot or something, It just really... I've got so much admiration for them, and I'd much rather be the person who sits at home on my computer writing the gags and then sending them off to them than by, it's yours now. And away they go. They can do all the travelling and the cruises and whatever. I'm quite happy being at the other end and the partner behind these things which come out of their mouths. So, getting back to it, I'm happy to be the old fool feed for the jokes, and I find that I get my laughs from just being the character. The character walk, the way I speak, and just being completely bemused by everything that's going on, or bewildered half the time, not even recognising my own daughter sometimes, as I do a bit in this show.
Did you never even think about donning the frock again?
I've only done it once, which was for Mother Goose, and I thought, no. I mean, I never wanted to do it. When I was first asked about Mother Goose, I assumed that I was going to be playing the Squire, and the producer just said to me, "Have you ever thought of playing Dame?" And I said, "No, I'm not a Dame. I've worked with some of the best, Les Dawson, and my dad, as I say, was a very good Dame, and there's been others around. I mean, we've got a young lad in this particular production called Daniel Morstan, who's excellent. He's very young, but he's got it all. And I worked with a character last year called Andy Brennan, again, another excellent Dame. And I know I couldn't compete with them. So, no, it's not me. It took me at least a week, I think, even to get the makeup right when I did it, and at least another week to feel settled and comfortable. I was ill at ease with it. So, no, I don't think I'd ever want to. I mean, if I ever did, it would be as an ugly sister, where there are two of you. So the responsibility, which is tremendous on a pantomime day, the responsibility is then shared between the two of you. And you get one who's perhaps slightly more bitter than the other one, and one slightly kinder. So you can play off one another. So, yeah, I mean, I think if I ever did a Dame again, I think it would be an ugly sister, which isn't really a Dame role, actually. I always think of Dames as being the motherly types, whereas the ugly sisters are a different style of dameship.
It's a whole genre in its own,
It is,
isn't it?
yeah, very much so, very much so. Certainly a particular aspect of pantomime which is very specialised, in my opinion, and not a lot of people can do it and pull it off, really. I mean, you have a lot of people who do drag acts and things like that and then come into pantomime, and it's a totally different ball game, and I mean, I've seen a few who tried it, but it just really doesn't work somehow, for me anyway.
Have you ever thought about being a baddie?
A baddie. The strange thing is, I was once cast. What happens generally is I'll be seen for, say, Hook or something like that, and then people say, "No, the comedy side's too good, isn't it? You're a bit wasted doing that." And the other day, while they were rehearsing a song, and Flesh Creep wasn't available because he was rehearsing a song, and I just said to the director, I said, "Would you like me to read in Flesh Creep or any of the other parts as well while you're rehearsing, so that you can watch rather than you have to read it in yourself?" So I did. I played Flesh Creep, and Gary, our producer, came in. He was sat down like that, and he was watching, And I went over to him and I said, "I never get cast as the villain. Now you can see why." I wouldn't mind, actually. I wouldn't mind having a go. I'd like to play Hook, but usually with when people do Peter Pan for the Hook, they usually have a name to play Hook, or sometimes they have a name to play Pan, which is not so bad, so you can play. But I'd love to play Hook, and I'd play him very camp, actually.
Would you? I was going to say, how would you play it? Would you play it Terry Thomasy style?
I think, that very much. That's when I did kind of audition for it once, and I did it very that sort of style. Yes, very smooth.
There's still time, isn't there, for you?
Yeah, I suppose so, yes. Well, let's hope so.
There's people still treading the boards.
Yes.
In their late 80s, aren't there? So.
I know, and very good they are too, Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of them still out there, still doing it, isn't there? And the lovely, Damien's dad, though he's not doing pantomime, he's coming up here. Brian Patton, who you've also interviewed on here, who I love dearly. So he's coming up to see us as well with his lovely wife Rachel, and who's one of the original television toppers. You probably knew about that anyway, but we'll give her a plug too. But, yeah.
Speaking then about roles, you were associated with a very famous role. Your name was in the hat for that, wasn't it?
Oh, was this?
A certain
science fiction thing.
A certain science fiction thing. I mean, recently you've been in War of the Worlds.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Yes, I was once. It was way back, I think 1992 or 3. I think something like that. When they'd axed Doctor Who. It wasn't popular with the hierarchy at the BBC, and they moved it as well from its normal Saturday night to a Wednesday evening against Coronation Street. So that made the viewing figures drop and gave them a very good excuse to have it axed. And the Prime Minister at the time, Margaret Thatcher, was trying to break up the BBC or make it more competitive by having its various arms sold out to, not to have it as a corporation anymore, a government-run thing. So it was around that time, and I didn't know a lot of the goings-on behind it, but I'd done a tour of Lock Up Your Daughters, and there was our director was a chap called Paul Bernard, who had directed episodes of EastEnders, Coronation Street, and Doctor Who. And he phoned me up out of the blue 7 months after we'd finished Lock Up Your Daughters and said, look, can I see you about something? I had a meeting with some people in suits and everything else, and they mentioned Doctor Who, and I thought, oh, well, perhaps it's an offshoot of the television series, and they'll be wanting me to play some minor character in it. And it turned out, no, it was they wanted to do Doctor Who as an independent production, and they wanted to go back to the William Hartnell style of doing it, and that I had a sort of similar look about me, I suppose. And so we started filming it and everything. About 3 months, I think I was filming it, and then suddenly it all just it's all been axed. No, it's not going ahead. And it was only later that I found out there were 2 other production companies also making Doctor Who episodes, and they were being encouraged by the BBC. All 3 companies were being encouraged by the BBC. You go ahead. And one was with Tom Baker, bringing back Tom Baker, and another company, and it was Brian Blessed, and me being the third for this other company. So everyone was led up the garden path quite a bit, and nothing ever came of it. Now, of course, just recently they brought it back again, but yes, it was off screen for such a long time. But I don't regret it, actually, that, it didn't go ahead. I had fun filming it. I was never, despite what some people might think, I was never a Doctor Who fan myself. And I had to learn lots of things about it, like sonic screwdrivers and whatever. I never knew that sort of thing existed, because I hadn't been a follower of it at all. I remember seeing a couple of early episodes, and thought that's all right. When it was in black and white, that was, it was okay, but it wasn't my sort of entertainment, if you like, And of course, I have become very good friends since. I say since, we were at different drama schools together, but Fraser Hines, who's one of the first Doctor Who assistants, and I think is the longest serving Doctor Who assistant, because I think he went away and then came back, and then, and then went on to be various other things, Joe Sugden in Emmerdale and whatever. But we were both at different stage schools. I think he was at Corona when I was at the Ada Foster. So we met when we were young, competing for the same roles each time, and so-and-so got them, and rather than me. But anyway, but we've become friends since, actually, and he's coming up to see the show up here as well, actually, because I don't think he's not doing a pantomime this year, but he usually does do a pantomime, but not this year. So after Christmas, he's coming up to see the show here.
You said a while back about you worked with Les Dawson.
Yes, yeah.
Who have you actually been genuinely excited about working with over the years?
Les was one of them, actually, because he was pretty well known when I worked with him, and that was pantomime. And again, I think it was, I can't remember, I think it might have been Aladdin. And I was playing the Emperor, and of course he was Widow Twankey, and he was a lovely man. I mean, he really was a lovely man, and we chat quite a bit in the dressing room. But I had a real, not exactly overawed by him, but I had a lot of admiration for him, and he was funny. That deadpan humour was the same off stage. And he was very kind to me insofar as he had a television programme a little while after that called Dawsons Weekly, and he personally invited me onto that to play little roles here and there, little sketches and things in that, as we worked together in pantomime, But I also worked with Morecambe and Wise when I was very young, and they weren't terribly well known, and they were given a television series which didn't kind of work, so it was very early on. I just played a posh schoolboy in one sketch with them, and then much later, when they were more of a success, I played just someone who was announcing the guests at some party in a wig, an Elizabethan costume and whatever. But it just made me laugh so much. When we were recording it, I couldn't stop giggling. No, I was meant to be straight, and Eric particularly just used to wind me up. He would just do something different each time. Or this is the way they looked at you or something, and you just collapse in fits of laughter, And it was the same. You go to the canteen, and I just could not stop. Tears would be streaming down my face when they were just having a normal conversation, and there was nothing that was particularly funny. It was not a joke or anything like that. It was just the whole ambience and everything that they were just saying just made you kind of laugh. It's not a joke you can repeat because there's no joke. It doesn't, coming out of my mouth, it means nothing.
It's not work then when it's like that, is it?
Oh no! I mean, well, it is and it isn't. I mean, you obviously you're doing a job and you're getting paid for it, so working that way. But I mean, when it is so much fun, when you're working with wonderful people like that, But the downside is, of course, when you're not working, it's not great at all. That's the worst part of it. I was going to tell you about that Des O'Connor. Chatted to him once and just joking around, and he was saying, "Have you heard the story about the out of work actor? He's been out of work for months and months and months." And then one day his agent just phones up and says, "I've got a job for you. It's a bit different to what you would normally do, but it's going to be great exposure for you, great coverage." He said, "Well, what is it?" So he said, "Well, it's a film premiere in Leicester Square, and they need someone to announce the guests as they arrive in their cars." You know this story?
No, I don't know.
You were looking at me sort of knowledgeably.
No.
And anyway, it's announcing the guests as they arrive in their cars. And that's all. But everyone's going to be there. All the press, the TV cameras and everything else. It'd be great for you, great exposure. So he said, "All right, I'll do it. The money's okay and everything." He said, "I'll send you through the details of, which car is containing which artiste and things like that, and the running order, as it were." So it's great. So he gets it, the running order, and he's right. Okay, Sean Connery, Sophie Loren, and Deborah Kerr. Well, that's going to be difficult. That could be better practice that one. Deborah Kerr's car. I don't want to be saying Deborah Kerr's car. Deborah Kerr's car. Deborah Kerr's car. Deborah Kerr's car. Got to get it right. Got to get it right. So the big night comes, and the first car comes along, and he stands up proudly, and Mr. Sean Connery's car. And out gets Sean Connery and all the boarding and everything, and in he goes. and then the next car comes over. Miss Sophia Loren's car. Applause as she goes in, and everything else. Then there's the difficult one, Jeep Breath. It's Deborah Kerr. Miss Deborah Kerr's car. And then she goes, thank goodness for that. And this is the next car, and as the person gets out, he said, Mr. Alfred Hitchcar's cock. On that note.
So you've worked with some of the greats. What about the up-and-comers? Who have you worked like that with?
So many. I mean, I say that now. I'm just trying to think, actually. I mean, there are young people that I see are now regularly working. Not names as yet, but I think they're going to have a career. But then there's others that I've seen, and young girls actually mostly, who you think, they've got a real great singing voice, and they're amazing on stage as well, and the way that you work together and things. And then suddenly they'll get married and have a baby, and that's their not career over, but their focus has changed to something totally different. So I think it's more difficult in that way. But there are young people coming up. I mean, a friend of mine called John Clegg, who I knew his father, David Clegg, way back. And I used to write some material for them. John, when he was with Shane Ritchie, because David and Shane Ritchie had a double act for a while, so I used to write some material for them back then. And when John was born, I remember him as a toddler. But I'd not met him recently or anything like that. They were friends on Facebook and things like that. And I see what he's doing. And David, his father, was always saying, John's doing such and such, and where are you this year, and everything, But he's very good and up and coming. He's pretty much established now. But he's a very good performer, I think, And there are some people who are undervalued, if you like. There's a wonderful performer called, you may have heard him, Andrew Fleming, who's an impressionist, who I'm really good friends with. And strangely enough, we've never worked together, but we would like to. And he's seen me perform, and I've seen him perform, and we've always been friends. And I think he's one of the great. He does all the voiceovers for this production, actually, as well. And I think he's very undervalued, but I think that he's never been at the height of it. I mean, yes, he did go on Britain's Got Talent, but most people do that anyway these days just to get a bit more exposure, because there's no other outlet variety-wise to show off your act. And people say, it's all fixed. Well, I don't think it's fixed exactly. It's a bit too strong. There's a certain amount of manipulation, of course. And I was talking to Ashley about it the other night, actually, because we've got Ashley Butler, who was the winner of Britain's Got Talent a few years back now, when she had Pudsey, and now she's got a different dog called Sully, doing a similar sort of act. But we were talking about BGT and how it is manipulated, if you like, a bit. How some acts have to cut their material and someone else is given a little bit more, or the way they change things around force you into because there's a reason behind who they sort of want to be in the final, and but then that happens in all aspects of show business, really. There's always people who are the money people, who they want it done their way, But I was listening to your wonderful interview with Alex Belfield the other week, and he was going on about some producers. And I've got to say this, that I agree with a lot of what he says. But in Gary Telfer of Blue Genie, and also Darren Madison for Polka Dot Pantomimes, who continually ask me to be in their shows, they are some of the nicest and honest producers around. They don't rip you off, and this is a bit kind of more personal, but 2.5 years ago, something like that, I was signed to work here in Whitley Bay in Cinderella. Well, I hadn't signed at that point, but I said to Gary, yes, I will do it. And then it was discovered that I'd got cancer, lung cancer, and I was told only a few weeks, possibly a couple of months to live. So after I told them my family and everything, well, obviously the very first person outside the family I told was Gary. And I said, I'm telling you really now, so that you've got plenty of time to find a replacement actor. And he, and it brought tears to my eyes anyway at the time, he said, there's absolutely no way. He said, you're our definitive Baron Harder, and we will write the part out. We won't have a Baron. We won't have a Baron at all in it. But what we will do is, if you really do pass over in between, we will dedicate the show to you, and it will be in the programme. That was the first thing. Then I had a few more problems during treatment and things, which I won't bore you with all the details, but various infections and things. But I was having the treatment. I started to respond to the treatment, plus went into battle through myself. And then Gary came back. Well, I said to Gary, I'm feeling a lot better now, you know. But I said, I still don't think I'll be able to do. He said, well, what we'll do then is, if you feel that you'd like to be involved but couldn't actually appear on stage, what we'll do is we'll send a film crew down to where you live in Littlehampton with a costume and a bit of script, and what we'll do is we'll pretend you're Baron Hardup having a little seaside holiday. So we'll have you on the beach at Littlehampton, Skyping your daughter Cinderella and Skyping the Ugly Sisters, and we will show these things in the kitchen scenes and things like that, you know, during the production. And again, you know, there's absolutely no need for him to do that, but I was determined to not let him down, you know. And I finished I'd had chemotherapy and then I had radiotherapy, and I finished that in the October. Then we started middle of November with the rehearsals, and I did come back too quickly actually, and it's a great regret that during the run and everything I contracted pneumonia on the infected lung, and I had to miss the last 4 performances because I kind of collapsed in the wings, and they had to cart me off from here to hospital in an ambulance, and that was it. So the lovely stage manager, Geordie was his name, he went on for the last 4 performances in my role as the Baron. So, but also I couldn't go home on the day that I planned to as well, because I was still in hospital, you know. So that's the first time ever in my life that I'd missed a performance, and it was only because I was in hospital. I mean, during the first week of the shows, on our first day off, I went over to the hospital anyway, and they told me then, you've got pneumonia and that we'd like to keep you in for 48 hours. And I said, no, I can't do that. I've got 2 shows tomorrow, you know, usual thing. And so in the end they said, well, you know, it's not great, but if you really insist. So they gave me a course of antibiotics, which helped me through, you know. But then towards the end of the run, it just got worse and worse. And yeah, as I say, in the end, when the show had finished, and I just went off stage, and I didn't black out, but just my legs wouldn't work, you know, and so they sat me down and got an ambulance, and then that's when I was told that, I'm sorry, you've got really serious pneumonia, you know.
Oh, bless you. So, were the family angry at you?
Yes.
I can imagine.
Yeah, my wife wasn't too happy with it. But I mean, everyone here at the Whitley Bay Playhouse was just so supportive and lovely and wonderful, and I got presents sent to my home, wonderful gifts like box set of Morecambe and Wise and things like that. Do you know what I mean? All just which they'd intended to present me with at some point, because it was my then 40th professional pantomime here. So you know, they'd all thought of these little things, and because they'd been carted off, it was too late to give them to me, so they were sent to my home, you know. So yeah, the cast here and the crew and the front of house staff and everyone, absolutely amazing and wonderful, so supportive. And foolishly, they've had me back.
You're gonna be all right, though, aren't you?
Oh, yes.
Is the health good now?
I feel absolutely fine. I do get short of breath, but it's my excuse for getting out of the choreography and the dance routines. Oh, I'm sorry. I can't manage that. I'm fighting fit. I had a scan just a few weeks ago, then saw the oncologist, and they said, no, you're still benign, don't worry, and everything else, and don't need to see you for another 3 months. So,
what went through your mind then when you actually found out that you did have the big C?
That's quite strange, really, because I went to my doctor because I'd coughed up a little bit of blood. It wasn't anything, and I'd phoned him up the next day. I didn't tell my wife, and he said, "Well, you better come in and see me." It was a Friday. Come in and see me this evening. So I went along and saw him. And he examined me, and he said, "It's probably nothing to worry about, really. It's possibly just a burst blood vessel or something, you know." He said, "But I'll send you for an X-ray on Monday just to be on the safe side." So I went for the X-ray on the Monday, and then the next evening, the Tuesday evening, my doctor was knocking on the door and said, "Look, you're going to speak to you privately." So we went into my study, and he said, "This is the situation. You've got a large mass on the lung, and it's not good news, I'm afraid." You know, and he told me the words, and I said, "Well, I'm sorry, I can't die this year, because I've just signed a contract to do Cinderella in Whitley Bay, you know." And he said, "Well, no," he said, "I'm being serious." He said, "You know." So I said, "Well, I accept that." I said, "But, you know," and then he said, "Do you want me to tell my wife?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll bring her in, you know." So I brought her into my study, and we told her the news and everything, and she's kind of looking at me, and I'm saying, "I'll tell you what, I'm not giving up," you know. I said, "It's our 50th wedding anniversary in June." I said, "I'm not going to miss out on that, for one thing." I said, "And then I should be 70 in August. And if this is all going to happen, you know, then I want to have a big party." I mean, I'm not one for parties normally, but I thought, because I don't normally celebrate birthdays at home, you know, but I said, "Well, this could be my last. If I can make it through these next few months, this could be my last. I'm hanging around for those." And she just looked at me and said, "You're really going to fight this, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I certainly am. You know, why not? I'm not just going to roll over and, you know, and say that's it then, you know." Because the strange thing is, I felt okay. I hadn't felt ill or anything like that, you know. It was just this little coughing up a bit of blood. But soon as I started, well, as soon as I was diagnosed, funny enough, you start to get ill. Really strange, you know. And that's when I started really kind of, have I got the strength to do this? Can I fight this? But yeah, I did, and, you know, I'm still here. And but I got some infections from a bronchoscopy that I had to have, and then I got a neutropenia sepsis, which is a bit of a killer, after I'd started chemotherapy. And that put back treatments as well, you know, because I had to stop the chemo while they dealt with that, and then give me a different course of chemotherapy. Lost all my hair, or pretty much all my hair. So when I did make it up here to play Baron, I couldn't use my trademark eccentric professor style hair, and I bought myself an Elizabethan style wig with a bow at the back and everything, and wore that. But it didn't really feel quite right playing the character. It wasn't how I would normally. Well, it was how I'd normally do it, but it didn't feel right, as it were, you know, having to wear a wig. But, you know, these things happen. Now my hair is growing back, you know, still got a fine head of skin and split ends. You know.
Anything you'd still like to do in your career?
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to do One Man, Two Governors, playing Arthur. I think it is the old
Alfie.
That's it. Yeah, that's the part that I'd love to play. Now he doesn't have a huge amount of lines. Actually, it's mostly all physical. But you know, I'd love to do that. I'd just love to do a farce again, actually. I mean, the last farce I did was Run for Your Wife, which was ages ago now. But people don't seem to put on too many farces these days, you know. It's not fashionable anymore, perhaps, you know. But I'd love to do another farce. I did I did. Funny thing happened on the way to the Forum a few years ago. I'd love to do that again. And I also toured with Steptoe and Son, Murder at Oil Drum Lane, and I'd love to revive that, playing Albert again with hopefully with Andrew Fleming actually as Harold, because we've discussed it and said how much we'd like to do it. It's just really a question of finding a producer who's willing to take it on. It will sell definitely. I mean, it did before when we did it, but we were playing big theatres like the King's Theatre in Glasgow, which I think is a 1,500 seater, and of course if we were drawing 600 people, 650 people, they do tend to rattle around in a big place like that. But when you played the Devonshire Park at Eastbourne, that's ideal, or the Lowry at Salford, that's the ideal space for it. 500 people, that's sold out, so the big theatres are not the ones, it's the slightly smaller ones that it should tour to. So I'd love to do that again. And just keep on working, quite frankly, I don't mind being typecast, just as long as I'm cast.
You were in War of the Worlds as well, the new BBC series.
I think so. I filmed it over a year ago, and there were various things about when it was going to be on and when it wasn't. I don't know. And I played a character in it, but then I was told early on this year they've had to cut back on episodes. It was going to be a 5-parter, I think, first of all. So they padded out the original story, and they've introduced a lot of new characters anyway, though it's very faithful to the original book. So I was playing a character called Ray Vernon Clark, Professor of Aeronautics. And but I understand it might have been cut. But anyhow, I got paid for it quite handsomely last January, I think. I got paid for it. And the strange thing, after that, I was doing a film, because I thought that it all finished. So it was over a year ago, well over a year ago, that I was filming it, War of the Worlds. And then I was doing another film earlier this year called Spotters. And one of the, I was going to say extras, but you're not supposed to call them that now, supporting artists, was chatting away. She said, I've heard you're in War of the World. She said, I'm filming that next week. I'm playing a dead body or something, I can't remember. And I said, filming it next week? I said, I thought in post-production now, still filming. Because initially it was going to go on at Easter, I think. That was when they first planned it for. Then it was going to go on in the summer, and now it's on right now. And one of the excuses I found was they said, we've had to delay it because of Brexit. And I thought, what's that got to do with it? Really seems strange. But they cut it now to 3 episodes, so I think though I filmed it and paid for it, I'm not sure if I'm in it or not, actually, so we shall see. But it often happens like that with film and television, but I if I was at the start of my career, maybe I'd be sort of angry about it, because you think, I needed that, but now I've had if not reaching the heights of stardom, but been a jobbing actor for virtually all my life and been very lucky. I'm not overly ambitious to suddenly find myself thrust into the spotlight of fame and everything, especially these days when people are different about that. You get trolls and people have got cameras on their phones and everything else, so your life really isn't your own very much. I mean, it used to be okay when I was in television when I was younger. It used to be okay that people would sometimes very politely come up to you and say, would you mind signing this for me? Fine. But these days it's not, because everyone's got a camera and they say, can we have a selfie with you and all that sort of thing while you're out for dinner with your wife or something. I don't think I'd enjoy that particularly. It's nice to be known throughout the business, not so nice to be in the public eye too much, so that's it basically.
So in 40 odd years of performing then, where would you
50 odd years now? Actually, it is
sorry. 40 odd pantos. 40 odd pantos, 50 years performing. Favourite theatres?
So many. This one here, where we are in Whitley Bay, has become one of my favourites. I love the King's Theatre at Southsea. Haven't appeared there as often as I'd have liked. And there were so many others, like Theatre Royal at Lincoln, which is a bit kind of run down every bit. You go to the dressing rooms, you've got Tommy Cannon's, Bobby Ball's dressing room on the doors. And I do like the old theatres, and of course the one that I have worked with, going back to Charlie Drake, actually, I did Old King Cole with Charlie at the London Palladium. So I've never been back. No one's asked me.
You never know.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be. It's got to be one of those. And earlier this year, strangely enough, I was at the North Pier in Blackpool, and just sitting there in the dressing room, and you're thinking to yourself, God, the artists that have sat here, not particularly in this chair, not particularly in front of that mirror, but have been in this dressing room, obviously it's been refurbished and things like that over the years. We were thinking, oh, Ken Dodd was sat here at one point, and all those people you think of. Ted Ray was here, and you think, and I'm so privileged to be sat here in this dressing room, looking, and seeing the same views that they did and everything else. It's a tremendous privilege. Really is,
What would be your advice then to a younger you or younger people who are listening now?
Well, obviously, I think don't do it is the first thing, I think. But no, if you're really determined, it's highly, highly competitive. But don't try to copy anyone else. Find your own niche. I think when I hear singers today, for instance, they quite often sound the same, or they do it with a mid-Atlantic accent when they're singing, which they don't do in their normal speaking voice. So they're copying the actual artist who did the original version. And I would always say, find your own niche. And with an actor, I think it's the same. When you start out as a young actor like I did, you're going to get to a point in your life where, if you've had, say, in EastEnders as a young teenager or something like that, you're going to get to a point whereby they don't want you anymore because there's the storyline there anymore. But you think, right, I've been on EastEnders, that's fine. But then you want to go away and do some theatre, and theatre is totally different. I mean, it's much, much harder work. But you get to a stage where you're too old to play those younger parts that you were playing, but not old enough to have acquired any character as such. So there's always going to be that hiatus between being a 20-year-old and a 40-year-old. So you've got to fill that gap somehow. And if you're lucky, you'll be able to. But if you can find a character that is you, or an extension of yourself, so that they say, if we need, like, I'm fortunate insofar as I look a bit eccentric. So people say, oh, we need an eccentric professor, fine. Or we need a mad scientist, fine. Let's get Burton. And I don't mind that. And as I say, people say about being typecast, but what the hell? That's what you do. It's a job as an actor. And I find it very easy to slip into that role, because it is an extension of myself, I suppose, in a way. But that's the thing. Try and make yourself individual and not the same as the others. I've seen people turning up for auditions for the younger roles, and there might be 10, 12 of them there, and they've all got the same haircut. They're all wearing pretty much the same outfits and everything, and you're thinking, why don't you make yourself a bit different? Because then that way the casting director will more likely to notice you and think, perhaps we need them instead of this production line of young people all turning out the same. So yeah, that's it. I think just really be committed, be professional, and try and find your own niche. Those are the things that I think I would pass on. So.
Is there anything you wish you'd done differently?
I think, not career-wise, I don't think, because it is difficult. I mean, if I hadn't if I hadn't gone into as an actor, I'd like to have become a barrister, maybe, and studied law. And I do have an interest in law, and also politics too. Not that I want to be a politician, but when I was a journalist, I did cover politics quite a bit, so I had quite good grounding and learning, and worked alongside, or covered lots of political debates, and met quite a few political faces, and had good debates with them from time to time, whether I agree with their policies or not. It's always interesting to have that, that difference of opinion, which I think is terribly important. If we all felt the same, it would be very boring. But no, I don't think I've got any regrets as such. My regret would be possibly that I wish I'd been home more when my children were growing up. I wish that I would have had more money when they were growing up, so that I could possibly have provided them with a better lifestyle or better future. Mind you, they always say, my wife always says the same actually, it's not about money, it's about love, and as long as you give that, that is the main thing. But I wish that I had been more financially successful, if you like. I mean, when I was financially successful, my wife was the one who looked after all the money on my behalf, because if I've got it, I spend it. But when I was doing a lot of television, she was the one who dealt with the money, family finances, really. And I have been extremely lucky in that, insofar as we've never had to rent anywhere, never had to have a mortgage. We've always been able to buy cash, but that's down to her and doing that. As I say, if it had been me, I mean, I would have spent it all now on the partying. But
What's your vices then? What are your little vices?
My vices are, I do like a bottle of wine. I'm no connoisseur. Just a cheap something, whatever. $3.99 a litre. Oh, that was a very good year, wasn't it? Yeah. I do like it after a performance. So I never drink before a performance or anything like that. But when you finish the show in the evening, you think, sit back and relax now, and literally wind down. And and people say to me, because I'll go into the pub with them, and they'll say, I'll have a pint of this and a pint of that and whatever, and I say, I'll have a bottle of Chardonnay or something. Listen, a bottle, and they think you're mad, but really a bottle of 75 centilitres, it's only about 4 glasses basically, whereas they'll end up having maybe 6 pints of Guinness or something, and I'm still sipping away. And also they're very good round here in Whitley Bay. Everyone knows that I drink wine, so we used to rehearse over the road at a place called the Berkeley Tavern, and I'd go in there and get a bottle of wine, and I couldn't drink it all. Maybe I think, I've had enough now, I want to go back to the digs and everything. So they put my name on it and keep it in the fridge, for the next night and things like that. And they do that in various places around here where I go to, let's put it in the fridge for you, and that way, I mean, it also makes it a bit better in a way, because when you're with a group of people and you buy a round and you buy yourself a bottle, then I don't want them to feel obliged to buy you a bottle. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Because so there's an awkward thing there. They think, I'll have another one. I say, no, I've got all that. Well, I'll have another bottle. No, I don't want you to do that. If I bought you a drink, doesn't mean that you have to reciprocate. Or maybe I'll say, well, I'll have a tiny, a small glass of wine then, but I don't drink any spirits or something like that. But I think, I think that's my only vice. Yeah, I hope so. Anyway, because I'm off that register now.
So, the socialising with the company.
Yes.
How important's that been to you over the years?
Very, I think, and particularly with pantomime, where you're really stuck together in an environment, and you've got to pretend to. Well, I say pretend to. You've got to go out on that stage and have a party on stage, which goes over the footlights, so that audience are part of that party and enjoying, they're included. It's more so with pantomime than perhaps anything else, because we go through the fourth wall so much. So it's absolutely essential that all the casts get on. You can occasionally have the odd one who mucks it all up, by just being antisocial and not very pleasant and causing problems for various other people. Personally, I have not had too much of a problem, though I did a couple of years ago with a young actress, but that's all water under the bridge now. I was in the right and, she was in the wrong, and she's not working anymore. So
I think I know who you mean.
Yeah, I wasn't going to mention anyone
Yes.
in particular, but it was an unfortunate thing, and she just suddenly took against me. I mean, we were so fine and so friendly, and she told me so many private things about herself, and then suddenly one day she just turned like that, and I didn't know what I'd done wrong, and I was a bit upset, but and then it started creeping into the performance, and I couldn't have that. So I went out and bought a big bouquet of flowers and went to our dressing room and said, I don't know what I'm supposed to have done wrong, but whatever it is, please accept these as an apology. Can we get back to, if you don't want to socialise with me or talk to me off stage, okay, I'll accept that, but please can we get back to what we were doing on stage as before? And she just said, yeah, no need to have done that. Anyhow, when I left the theatre in the evening, she'd already gone. Left the theatre in the evening, and there were the flowers turned upside down in the dustbin, and so I thought, well, I can't do any more. And then I had a day off the next day, and the producers came to me and said, can we have a cup of coffee or tea or whatever in the hotel, which I did. And they said, we wanted you to be the first to know we've sacked this particular actress. And I said, nothing to do with me, I hope, And they said, no, nothing to do with you. She's been just a real problem throughout for a number of different reasons. And they said, we know what happened with you, because Keith Chegwin was in the same show, and he was in the next door dressing room, and he heard everything that I'd done and said to try to make amends for things I hadn't been guilty of, but buying the flowers and whatever. So he overheard all that, and he told the producers, what had happened there. So, and the next day she was gone, and the replacement, who they'd been sent a script to about 10 days before. And so she was already waiting. It was already,
yeah,
that's right.
The amber light was...
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But she made accusations against various people, musical director and things like that, to which the police were called, and it was all untrue. So it could have stained his character quite badly. I got off lightly, if you know what I mean. So, and compared with others who I've since heard from and about, and various incidents and things, But it's very sad, because the young lady in particular I thought was a wonderful performer. Because when she was on it, she was really on it, and a great performer. And now all that's been thrown out the window, really. No one will trust her ever again. It's a great shame, great shame.
Well, this leads me to my last question. Your dream pantomime. You can be in it. You can be sitting in the stalls watching it. You can choose the theatre, the production, and your cast can be alive or dead.
Oh God, that is a really, really difficult one, and I should have been aware of this coming up, but I have listened to other podcasts. I don't know. I mean, Cinderella is always my favourite. Has to be, because it was the first one that I ever saw. I absolutely adore the magic of it all, and the transformation scene and everything, and also the pathos that is in it between Buttons, but also with Baron Hardup and his daughter and everything. So it would have to be Cinderella, I think. If I was in it, I'd still like to be Baron Hardup. The thing is with dames, but the uglies, I absolutely adore Eric Potts as a dame, and I know that he doesn't like to play ugly because he's too kind. But it would just be such a joy to have him as one of the ugly sisters.
The nice ugly.
Nicer, yeah, that's right. Well, actually, not make them spiteful, but only for, I mean, a completely different turn on the whole thing. And because of the contrast, I think Ronnie Corbett as the other as the other ugly sister, and I think just the pure comedy from all that would be wonderful. Though you'd have to kind of rewrite the script a little bit. I think you still have the tearing up of the ticket, but not quite so viciously. Because I actually seen people in the audience, kids in the audience, in tears over that bit, you know, and you think, oh, what a shame, you know. Buttons, so many good ones. One of the favourites that I work with as a Buttons, and possibly one of the best Buttons, I think, was Stu Francis. You know, could crush a grape. I think it was just a wonderful Buttons when I worked with him. So I'd like to have him, but I've got to say, you see, Steve Walls plays really well as well. So, and I adore working with Steve. So yes, him.
They can alternate.
Yeah, that's right. But also there used to be a TV presenter, children's TV presenter called Peter Simon. Had things like Run the Risk and Double Dare, and he was a superb Buttons too when I worked with him. I really enjoyed working with him. So it's 3 Buttons really, and I can't really make it up. I better say Steve, because he's more likely to hear what I'm saying than the other 2. But anyway, yeah, I think, yes, well, Steve Walls is an excellent Buttons. I think he really knows how to play it. I'm just trying to think who else. Cinderella. My absolute favourite that I worked with just 2 years ago here was a young lady called Jessica Pease. She played Cinderella, and she's absolutely adorable. She's not a well-known name, but that doesn't matter. She's a great singer, great dancer, and off stage, one of the kindest, most generous people that I've ever met. She has got to be one of my favourite Cinders. But I have worked with someone, Sally Tomset was a very good Cinders, so it'd be nice to have her. But no, I think I'd go with young Jessica Pease, actually. So if you're listening, Jessica, you can send me the money later.
And what theatre would you like it in?
Sorry? What theatre would I like it in? Do you know, I'd like it to be at the King's Theatre in Southsea. I just like that old theatre. It's very creaky, and backstage it's terrible. I just love it. You know, it's an old Matcham theatre, and it has seen better days. But and also it's not too far off from home for me, actually. You know, it's about an hour's drive, so you know I could get home for Christmas from there. So
excellent.
Yeah, and fairy godmother, Peggy Mount.
Oh.
I think I did work with Peggy many years ago, and I think, though she's not with us anymore, bless her, she's such a battle axe as a persona, but she's not. I mean, and I think as fairy godmother, it would give another side to how people sort of visualised her, you know. So I think she'd be brilliant as a fairy godmother. That's it, I think.
Well, David, thank you so much for taking part in the Panto podcast.
No, thank you so much. I'm very, very flattered that you asked me, and it's been most enjoyable. Thank you very much.